there. Thank you very much for joining Psyche's virtual training, the first of 2021, wherein he will introduce us to grog, the making of and the drinking of. Just a few logistical points. Everyone's going to be on mute until the end, and then I will allow people to unmute themselves, but you have to manually unmute yourselves at that point in order to speak and ask questions. We have 45 minutes here, so Girth will do his presentation. There'll be questions afterwards. Please hold if you can. And then I'm going to leave it over to him. We are recording this session. I'm going to delete everything before I unmuted everybody just to get rid of that conversation. And then it will be posted on HMS Psyche's YouTube channel. Girth, did I miss anything?
No, that sounds good.
All right, it's all up to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. Also, for everyone's knowledge, my speaking notes will be published or posted on the HMS Psyche Facebook group page. So if you want to read these at a later time and date or print them off for yourselves, they'll be there. So for those of you, actually, it's great. I'm seeing some people that I've communicated with electronically, but actually it's the first time I actually see them. So Peggy, it's great to actually see you. I can't see who else is on there. Carl, that's great, because right now I'm on speaker mode, or I think I am on speaker mode. Let me try. Yeah, I'm on speaker view. Okay. So tonight's presentation to start off by toasting off the year is by making grog and the history of grog. So instead of me chit-chatting, talking about grog, why don't we make it right now so you can enjoy it and then listen to me as you're enjoying your grog. So basically, grog was 1 quart of water, fresh, sweet water, half a pint of dark rum, half an ounce of lime or lemon juice, depending on where you were. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to show the rum that I'm using. I'm using Lamb's Navy rum. And then finally, about half an ounce of sugar. Now this is the ration for an entire day, where basically it'd be divided up between 2 servings. So here I have actually is a pint measure, comparing that with my quart measure. So my pint measure of almost water, my quarter pint of dark rum. Oh boy, that's almost full. I'm gonna just pour half, so a quarter ounce of lemon juice, if it fits in there. Wow, I'm almost at the rim here, guys. And finally, about a quarter ounce of sugar, basically sugar to season. That is the essential recipe for making grog. So, oh, Ryan's gone. So as we start, hey, why don't we first have a toast? I'll back up here so you can actually see my pint. Have a toast to 2021. May it be a better year than 2020. Cheers to everyone. All right, I'm going to keep my pint with me as I'm talking. So I'm going to be speaking regarding grog, its history, only from 1655 to 1816, because we know we portray the War of 1812, and definitely grog and the rum ration has a history of the Royal Navy until 1970 or 1971. But I don't know about that because I stopped at 1816. Well, actually, I do know, but I just didn't write it down. So basically in 1655, the Royal Navy and British forces captured Jamaica. So they had now access to the sugarcane islands. And then that was the first unofficial issue of rum aboard Royal Navy vessels. Yeah, you guys can drink whenever you want. You don't have to wait for me. Now, the 2 predominant refreshments for sailors in the Royal Navy at that time was either beer or water. Both of them would be stored in wooden casks. The beer, well, it could have been one or two different styles. It could have been a small beer, which is about 3%, or a strong beer, which probably would about 5 to 6%, except unfortunately, the breweries that were providing the beer to the Royal Navy, sometimes they were not on the up and up, and they would dilute the strong beer with water and making it down to about 3%. The disadvantage of small beer, of 3% alcohol beer, is that it doesn't last very long. It's got a short shelf life. So it gets sour. And, sailors don't like sour beer. They drink the sour beer before they drink the water, because the water could be even worse. Because if you leave water in a water barrel in an oak barrel long enough, it's going to get brackish. And also, and this is one thing I enjoyed seeing on a cut, some of the cut tape from Master Commander, when Dr. Maturin actually took a sample of the water and looked at it with a, I think it was a microscope, and he was amazed to see of the aquatic life in the water barrel, in the scuttlebutt. So, rum, what is it? It's basically produced from what's known as the wash. When you produce sugar from the sugar cane, you'll have this residue, this byproduct, which they would ferment and distill it, and it would become rum. Rum, there's two different ways they believe the word came from. The Latin name for sugar is saccharum. So, you've got the word rum right there. And also there was another word coming from the 1700s from the sugar plantations, rumbustion. Is that where the Western Lake Station got its name for its boat? And basically it came from the sugar plantations regarding drinking this fermented distilled liquid or liquor coming from the residue of the sugar canes. The great thing about rum is that it's sweet in taste, and also it has a long shelf life to it as compared to beer. Now, this was originally only served to the Royal Naval vessels in the West Indies station because there were no breweries in the area. Meanwhile, the captains of the ships were able to supply their vessels with other local spirits. Rum is available. All right, let's give them rum. In 1731, the daily allowance of half a pint of rum was basically was standard to the Royal Navy seamen, as I said, only in the West Indies station. 9 years later, in 1740, the rum issue became the daily alternative to beer, and it became a common practice. Now, it was consumed raw, so not diluted. It was just pure rum, and it was measured in drams, of which I was doing some research about that, and I don't really know how many ounces was a dram. I still have to do a bit more research on that. Now, also, you were supposed to drink your rum. So imagine half a pint of raw rum in one gulp, and as they say, with no heel taps, meaning no leftovers. You literally had to drink it all down, so that when we did it at the reenactment event in Bath, where everyone had to drink their grog and then tip it over to show that there was no leftovers, no heel taps, because the officers did not want the sailors to kind of hide away some of the rum so they could enjoy it later, or even keep some of it, put it in a bigger container, and over a few days be able to have that much raw rum to drink. And you know what would happen? They'd get drunk. And that is what basically was one of the major issues for the West Indies station at that time. By drinking the raw rum, was that sailors were getting quite inebriated, quite drunk, and would get injured up in the rigging, possibly falling from the rigging onto the deck or into the sea. Now, Vice Admiral Edward Vernon, who became the commander of the West Indies station, issued Order 349 in 1740. It was basically the recipe for what we now know as grog. Half a pint of rum, so again, half a pint, to be mixed with a quart of fresh water, and the seamen could purchase sugar and limes and to add to the flavor to make it more palatable. It was to be mixed in a scuttlebutt on the deck of the ship or vessel and supervised by the lieutenant of the watch to make sure that every seaman was receiving their fair share of the grog, and also to make sure that there was no issues. So what eventually happened is that scuttlebutt became the grog tub. So a special half barrel that was designated specifically for the mixing of the grog and the issue of the twice daily grog ration. Now, the grog ration was to be served twice a day, so a pint to every seaman who deserved it between 10 and 12 in the morning, and the second serving between 4 and 6 in the afternoon. At first, the mixing of the water and the rum with lime or lemon juice and sugar was unpopular because seamen can be rather conservative and they don't like things to change, but they eventually accepted it. Drunkenness became less prevalent, fewer accidents were occurring, and the drink got its name or its nickname from Vice Admiral Vernon, because his nickname was Old Grogham, because he liked to wear his waterproof coat, which was, the material was called Grogham. So they called the drink in honor of him, because he was well liked by seamen as grog. In 1756, there was a new set of the regulations and instructions relating to His Majesty's service at sea. It officially states that the rum ration was to be mixed with water. So in 1756 was the first, could say, publication of grog, of what we now know as grog. Now again, this was most popular in the West Indies station, but as ships started to travel more towards Halifax for the North American station, and ships were carrying rum back and forth, and even ships going back to England, and the seamen had been enjoying grog down in the West Indies, the tradition continued on to other stations of the Royal Navy, where then it became the standard issue ration for beverages was rum, and after the local beer was exhausted because they had drunk it all. Now, prior to 1816, it was the ship's pursers who were responsible for the testing and issuing of rum. So when we talk about the testing, is what was the strength? What was the alcohol percentage? What was the proof? And it wasn't until much later were they finally able to create a scientific way of measuring the alcohol level in the rum. So the term proof actually comes from a recipe from the Royal Arsenal, where they decided, okay, take your rum, mix it with a little bit of water, and mix it with a little bit of black powder. Then by using what they call a burning glass, which was basically a large magnifying glass, using the sun rays, you had to ignite the black powder. If the black powder ignited, it was proof that the original rum was not already diluted, to a greater content or concentration of 3 parts water to 1 part rum. If that was proven, then the purser was good. If the black powder did not ignite, then the purser would be in trouble and not popular with all the seamen. There's actually been one story where the black powder ignited very powerfully, and that was the end of that purser. And then the seamen were able to drink as much rum as they wanted to. So that is basically the history of grog until 1816. There's a lot more regarding grog. Basically, over the next decades and century, the portion of rum got smaller and smaller and smaller, where also the sailors had the choice of not having the rum. Instead, they get some money, and also that the rum would not be issued to boys, whether they be powder monkeys or captain's servants and other volunteers. And then finally, I believe it was in 1970 that Black Tot Day occurred, where the Royal Navy decided, all right, it's no longer safe for us to issue rum to our seamen because of the challenges that they have regarding the machinery and the weapons. You cannot have suddenly someone after drinking some rum pressing the wrong button and suddenly sending off some missiles up into the air. So we can have that as another presentation. I don't know about you, but I sure have not really consumed much of my ration of rum, I should say of grog. It would probably, well, it would take me a little while because, I'm not the biggest rum drinker, but I do enjoy it. Now, the thing is today too, the rum that we have available, at least here in Canada, is only 40% alcohol. Meanwhile, the rum that they probably were using was at least with 40% alcohol, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be 80 proof. The alcohol that the rum they would have used would have been a minimum of 151 proof. So it would have been a minimum of 75% alcohol per volume. And they could have had something that was even stronger. So can you imagine drinking this half pint of rum with it being almost at least 75% alcohol? No wonder the sailors were, sometimes going a little bit even more from side to side, and not because of the waves and because of the wind, because they had too much rum in them. That is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Fantastic. Well done, Girth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves. Keep in mind, you have to manually unmute yourself to speak. I'll start the questions. I just have one. Why was it limes and not some other citrus fruit that they chose?
Well, I've read from different various books. It depended on where you were based. So in some stations, limes was more available than lemons. And the other thing too is the country that produces all lemons is Spain. And for a while, Spain was not on the most friendly terms with England. So the Royal Navy was not able to get lemons. So now from another book that I read, limes only have 1/3 the amount of vitamin C compared to lemons. So drinking grog was a good way to fighting off scurvy, but you would need even more lime juice in there than if you were using lemons.
Hey,
So it
Gert.
depends on where you were. I believe here for North America, we had more access to limes than lemons. And it wouldn't have been fresh limes or lemons. It would have been a concentrated liquid. And the Admiralty tried to find so many other ways of fighting off scurvy because they personally found that the juice of limes and lemons was so expensive and they didn't want to spend all that money on their seamen, even though it was for their own health.
Was the origin of adding either lime or lemon juice done from a culinary perspective for taste, or do you think it had more to do with the dietary supplement requirement, including it in the grog versus having it ingested in some other way?
I think initially it was just for making it more flavorful.
Yeah.
But then again, from the book one of the books I was reading, let me just find it, here it is. From reading the book Nelson's Blood by James Pack, a retired Royal Navy officer. They thought maybe that Admiral Vernon or Vice Admiral Vernon had a notion that limes and lemons could be beneficial in fighting off scurvy. It was not scientifically proven, but he thought it might be beneficial. And there's a very good book called actually Scurvy, written by a Canadian, where it talks about the three men who really did the research, and both at Haslar Royal Naval Hospital. Another one was a ship's captain, and the third I think was the physician to the fleet. But it took like almost 100 years for finally the Admiralty to agree, yes, vitamin C is the best thing to fight off scurvy. But in this scenario for grog, originally it was just for flavoring. But then that became, when they realized that it fights against scurvy, it became a important ingredient to grog. And it took, again, several decades before the other national navies realized that. So the grog with the lime or lemon juice was a national secret.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Could I jump in with a question?
Absolutely.
Have you come across in your research, Garth, whether or not the Royal Navy that was stationed here on the Great Lakes, would they have been issued grog, or were there breweries enough nearby that they would have been drinking beer instead?
I have not read yet. I've not found any documentation on that perspective yet, keeping in mind that whether Kingston or York, we're still very small communities. If there was beer, it would be probably coming up from Montreal or Quebec City, where there were already breweries. Because I know from my past life being a Montrealer and having gone to Quebec City many times, one of the intendants of New France, Jean Talon, was known as being the first man who established a brewery, and that'd be before 1759. So if there was beer, most likely it was coming up from Montreal and Quebec City, of which probably the Americans captured as it came up to St. Lawrence. You know, capture that boat. Forget about the other one.
Yeah.
Get the beer.
I think that makes sense
because
yeah, I think I came across it in General Brock's when they took an inventory of his household possessions after he died. He had, barrels of Quebec beer, as it was noted. So yeah, that would totally make sense. Awesome,
Yeah,
thank you.
I have not yet. It's a good point. I'll do some research regarding when were the first breweries established in York. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be horrible to be more historically accurate? We could not drink grog on the Great Lakes.
We could just
Sorry,
drink
you
straight
broke up
rum.
there, Ryan.
I'm just saying, to be true to the history, we as reenactors could not drink grog. If there was none on the Great Lakes at the time, we would be relegated only to beer.
Or worse, fresh water out of the lake.
Yes.
So, but the other thing to keep in mind is that we would have had 1 gallon of beer a day. Oh, you're drinking Pussers.
I
What proof is that?
have with me the gunpowder proof Pusser's rum. And it says on it, prior to the invention of the hydrometer, the ship's purser or pusser, as he was called, shut down claims of watering down sailors' daily rum taught by mixing a few grains of gunpowder to the rum to see if it would burn. If the mixture ignited, the rum was at proof. If it didn't, the purser might find himself tossed to the sea. The pusser's rum remained at gunpowder strength until the daily issue was terminated on 31st July 1970, known as Black Tot Day.
Oh, phew, I've been vindicated. Thank you. Now, what's the alcohol content on that gunpowder proof?
54.5%.
Okay, interesting. I'm gonna just check. Someone asked a question because I'm just gonna check another bottle of rum that I have. If I find it. Yeah.
It tastes
So-
awful, by the way.
That would be some experimental archaeology we could do at an event.
So usually in February or March, other than this year, I go down to Aruba and I actually picked up a bottle of 151% dark rum. So, and that's actually 75.5% alcohol. So 1 year, when we're able to get together for the boat crew, we'll actually make some grog. We'll make 2 batches of grog, standard rum and the 151 proof. And we'll do a tasting. And we'll, of course, we'll do this at night where we don't have to be out on the longboat and where we could just go crash in our tents afterwards. But yeah,
I
so
made the mistake of buying 151% one time. The bottles look identical and it tastes like gasoline. And I ended up using it to make rum cakes and stuff. It was
ooh,
awful.
that'd be yummy.
Oh, well, it was better than drinking it. It was just horrible.
Well, see, the thing is that we're not used to it. But imagine
Yeah.
again, if that was the only liquid available, liquid refreshment, and you know, you got a little
Yeah.
buzz out of it, you know, that's where it's funny seeing the movie, The Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, where, you know, yeah, here they are drinking straight out of the bottle, and that is overproof rum, you know, and truly being 3 sheets to the wind. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. So what was the reason for having rum? I mean, you mentioned light, or like you mentioned beer that wouldn't have a very long shelf life. Why make grog in the first place? Was it meant to stretch the ration of rum available to the onboard ship?
Well, originally they were not watering it down. It would have been just half a pint of raw, pure rum. But there was too many
Okay.
accidents.
Okay.
People were getting drunk and then being told, okay, you got to go up in the rigging and do some work. Well, here they are walking out onto the yard and suddenly they slip and poof, they go down.
But you said as
So-
early as 1750 that original recipe was published that had the rum diluted with water.
Yeah,
First of all, and then-
1756.
Okay, and then
Yeah,
later
so-
on, the sugar and the lemon juice was added.
No, well, the sugar and the lime was mentioned in 1740 in Vice Admiral Vernon's order for the West Indies station. Then in the regulations and instructions relating to His Majesty's service at sea mentions about watering the rum. And then it could be, you know, you have to keep in mind that individual messes could purchase other ingredients and so they could add in different flavorings. They would
see.
receive basically the rum and the water initially, and then they'd have to add in other flavorings. But I don't know exactly when the lime or lemon juice and sugar became part of the weekly rations. That'd be in my other presentation, which is regarding the food rations of the Royal Navy, which will be in 4 weeks. So if you want to learn more what the sailor ate, in 4 weeks, there'll be that presentation. And in 2 weeks, will be a presentation on the use of the blunderbuss by Acting Lieutenant Ryan Moore. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you fire that in your townhouse.
Yeah, I won't be firing it.
Well, it's just like initially I was wanting to show to you regarding proof. I thought, I don't think I should do that indoors. So instead we had to talk about it. But it'd be a neat video to do. So maybe we'll videotape that another time when it gets a little bit warmer and lighter. So we could film it outside and show this is what proof means.
Idea, I
So,
love it.
yeah.
All right, we've got
Can I
a few
just-
more minutes left. Peggy, you have a question?
I just want to say thanks for letting me join in. I'm not part of your crew really, but I just want to say hi to all my Canadian friends. We miss you.
Stay
miss you
healthy,
too.
drink a lot of lemon juice or lime juice, and hope to see you soon, or hope to meet you, actually.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
These
love
sessions
reading
are
all
open
your
to
posts.
anyone on the Facebook group, so by all means, encourage others to join in and continue to follow our series. We have, as Girth mentioned, several more planned into the future, and they're open to everyone. You don't have to be a member of our crew. You just have to get the invite through our Facebook group or through our website. Now it's available, and we'll send you the details if you confirm going, and off you go.
Yeah, great.
Rory,
Great.
one
Any
last
other
comment.
questions?
Just a quick question. This is something I've come across, but I wanted to know if you came across it in your research, because I feel like you've done a lot more on this than I have. There's a lot of sort of mentions of captains either reducing the amount of water or increasing it. So, you know, like a 3-part grog or a 4-part grog like we're drinking tonight. Or if they get really desperate and they have to make it stretch, then doing, you know, a 7-part grog. Do you know if that actually happened historically, or is that just sort of one of those myths?
No, I've read of that as well.
Hmm.
I think it might be they'd have to stretch it because depending on how long they were on station, or until the next time they'd be going into port to a supply depot or victualling depot to be able to get more rum. Now, definitely the captain had the right to do that, as well as for seamen who had misbehaved, that they would not receive their grog ration. It could be a penalty to them. So, because, you know, definitely the sailors always look forward to their rum ration because, hey, it's booze, it's alcohol. And it actually became a, how can I say it? They expected it. It was part of their daily allowance of getting that rum or some other alcohol. And, you know, as we know the expression, happy crew is a happy ship. Okay, as long as the crew is not too jovial and drunk, but you know, they were always looking forward to their grog or other spirits every day.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. You know, it's an ongoing, the research never stops. You know, and I always open to hear other perspectives. I've been in communication with the reenactment group HMS in England as well, because I did hear, now I think it might be for a later time period, where warrant officers were able to drink their rum neat. And also officers, commissioned officers, well, they'd have their own stores of alcohol, so they could be drinking their claret or whatever else, but they still would have access to rum if they so had needed to, because they would receive their rum ration. And there's that wonderful little scene in Hornblower where he needed his collar or his shirt ironed by the purser, and he said, okay, I'll give you my rum ration for the day. I said, all right, I'll do it for you. Sure.
And with that, we're at time. Thank you very much, Girth, for your presentation. That was wonderful. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to Girth or anyone else in our society, and we'll try to get you the answer. And keep an eye out for this presentation on our YouTube channel, and keep an eye out for the next upcoming virtual training. Thank you very much. Stay safe and maintain a positive psyche.
Oh,
Hey.
I have to
King,
drink more to that.
King, God bless him.
God bless the king and our
The king.
Commodore.
And the
Honor,
toast for
President.
Wednesday is to ourselves, for no one else is likely to care. To ourselves.
Here, here.
Here, here. I still have half my ration to drink.
I'm